What if Ned defeated Tywin Lannister? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Ned Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North, a man known for his honor, his duty, and well, let's just say, his occasionally questionable decision-making skills. But what if, just what if, things had gone differently for Ned in King's Landing? What if, instead of falling into Cersei's trap and being imprisoned, Ned had managed to outmaneuver the Lannisters? What if, instead of being betrayed in the throne room, Ned had actually won? Today, we're diving into a scenario where Ned Stark, driven by a keen sense of justice and a surprising amount of strategic cunning, not only survives in the viper pit of King's Landing, but actively turns the tables on his enemies. Imagine this: Ned, having deduced Cersei's treachery and Robert's blindness, decides to act preemptively. He uses his position as hand to discreetly gather loyal allies within the City Watch, men who value honor and duty above gold. He sees the brewing storm, the subtle manipulations, the creeping tendrils of Lannister influence tightening around the capital. And he knows he needs to act fast. So instead of confronting Cersei in the gardens, he prepares a more decisive strategy. He sends word to Catelyn, urging her to raise the banners of the Riverlands and prepare for war. He knows the Lannisters will retaliate, and he needs the North and the Riverlands to be ready. But his primary objective isn't King's Landing. It's Tywin, Tywin, ever the calculating patriarch, understands that the Riverlands are the key to securing his family's power. He knows that Robb Stark will seek to aid his mother. Thus, he intends to crush the Riverlords and make an example of them. Ned understands this as well. In our scenario, Ned anticipates Tywin's movements perfectly. He understands that Tywin will strike swiftly and decisively, aiming to cripple the Riverlands before they can fully mobilize. With the help of Littlefinger, yes, even Littlefinger can be useful when properly motivated, Ned subtly manipulates the situation, ensuring that Tywin's forces are funneled into a specific area, the stony ground, a place where the terrain favors ambush, where the forests are dense and the rivers treacherous. This is where the game changes. This is where the lion's roar becomes a whimper. Tywin, confident in his military might and underestimating the strategic capabilities of the Northerners, marches his army into the stony ground. He believes he holds all the cards, that his superior numbers and seasoned soldiers will easily crush any resistance the Riverlands can muster. He's wrong. Ned, having slipped away from King's Landing under the cover of darkness, aided by Varys, who, let's be honest, enjoys a bit of chaos, joins Robb Stark and the Riverlords. He brings with him crucial information about the Lannister army, its strengths, its weaknesses, and, most importantly, its planned route. He's not just a man of honor, he's a strategist. The battle itself is a brutal and chaotic affair. The Riverlords, fueled by a burning desire for revenge, fight with a ferocity that surprises even themselves. Robb Stark, young but surprisingly adept at warfare, leads the vanguard with a boldness that inspires his men. But it's Ned's strategic brilliance that truly turns the tide. He divides the Riverland forces into smaller, more mobile units, using the terrain to their advantage. They harass the Lannister flanks, disrupt their supply lines, and pick off isolated patrols. He sets traps, ambushes, and cleverly utilizes the rivers to create bottlenecks, forcing the Lannister army into vulnerable positions. The dense forests of the stony ground become a deadly maze for Tywin's forces. Every shadow conceals a hidden enemy. Every rustle of leaves heralds a potential attack. The Lannister soldiers, accustomed to open battlefields and decisive victories, find themselves disoriented and demoralized. The fighting is fierce, close quarters, and bloody. Knights clash, swords ring, and arrows fill the air. The Riverlands men, fighting on their own soil, know every path, every tree, every hidden gully. They use this knowledge to their advantage, ambushing Lannister patrols and melting back into the woods before reinforcements can arrive. The battle is a symphony of chaos, a dance of death orchestrated by Ned Stark. He anticipates Tywin's every move, countering his attacks and exploiting his weaknesses. He uses feints and diversions to draw the Lannister forces into carefully prepared kill zones. And then, the final blow. Ned, knowing that Tywin is a man of habit, a man who always positions himself at the center of his army, directs the bulk of the Riverland forces towards the Lannister command center. He leads the charge himself, a grim expression on his face, his sword drawn, ready to face the lion in battle. The clash between Ned Stark and Tywin Lannister is brief but intense. Two men representing opposing ideologies collide in a whirlwind of steel and fury. Tywin, a seasoned warrior despite his age, fights with a cold, calculating precision. Ned, fueled by righteous anger and a desire to protect his family, fights with a raw, untamed power. But it's not a fair fight. Tywin is surrounded by his guards, his elite Lannister soldiers. Ned, however, has the element of surprise on his side and the support of his loyal Riverland allies. The Lannister ranks break. The elite guard falls. The battle rages around them, but for a moment, time seems to slow. Ned and Tywin stare at each other, their eyes locked in a silent battle of wills. Then, with a final, desperate lunge, Ned disarms Tywin, knocking the sword from his grasp. Before Tywin can react, Ned's sword is at his throat. The fighting around then slowly dies down. The Riverland soldiers, seeing their leader victorious, raise a thunderous cheer. The Lannister soldiers, demoralized and leaderless, begin to surrender. Tywin Lannister, the Lion of Casterly Rock, is defeated. The aftermath of the battle is chaotic, to say the least. The Riverlands are jubilant, their spirits lifted by the unexpected victory. Robb Stark, hailed as a hero, begins to consolidate his power, gathering his forces, and preparing for the inevitable Lannister retaliation. But the real prize, the true game-changer, is Tywin Lannister himself. Imprisoned and humiliated, the once-feared patriarch is now a captive of the Starks and the Riverlords. The strategic implications of Tywin's capture are enormous. With their leader gone, the Lannister armies are thrown into disarray. The carefully laid plans of Cersei and Jaime begin to unravel. The Lannister grip on the Iron Throne weakens. The Riverlands, no longer under threat of immediate invasion, can now fully mobilize their forces and join the North in open rebellion against the Iron Throne. The balance of power has shifted dramatically, but the capture of Tywin also presents a complex dilemma for Ned and Robb. What to do with him? Execute him? Hold him for ransom? Use him as a bargaining chip? Ned, ever the honorable man, struggles with the decision. He knows that executing Tywin would be seen as a just act by many, a fitting punishment for his crimes. But he also knows that it would only escalate the conflict, fueling the Lannister rage and potentially plunging the realm into an even more brutal and protracted war. Ultimately, Ned decides to keep Tywin alive, at least for now. He understands that Tywin is a valuable asset, a powerful symbol. As long as Tywin remains a prisoner, the Lannisters are effectively neutralized. Their power diminished. With Tywin secured, Ned turns his attention to King's Landing. He knows that Cersei and Jaime will not sit idly by. They will undoubtedly attempt to regain control of the Iron Throne, to crush the rebellion and avenge their father's capture. Ned sends word to Stannis Baratheon, the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, offering him an alliance. He recognizes that Stannis, a man of unwavering principles and a formidable military commander, is the only one capable of challenging the Lannisters' claim. He also sends a discreet message to Dorne. They hate the Lannisters as much as anyone. An alliance with Dorne could be a powerful counterweight to the Lannisters' influence in the south. The pieces are set. The stage is set for a new chapter in the Game of Thrones. A chapter where Ned Stark, instead of being a pawn, is now a player. A chapter where the North and the Riverlands, united and emboldened, stand ready to challenge the might of the Iron Throne. A chapter where the lion is caged and the Stark direwolf roams free with Tywin Lannister languishing in a northern dungeon. The meticulously crafted Lannister war machine begins to sputter. News of the Hand's capture spreads like wildfire, sowing discord and uncertainty amongst the Lannister ranks. Suddenly, those gold cloaks don't seem so shiny, those promises of riches not so assured. Discipline frays, supply lines falter, and the aura of invincibility that surrounded the Lannisters begins to dissipate like morning mist. For Robb Stark, the victory is a double-edged sword. While the immediate threat posed by Tywin's host is neutralized, the young king in the north is now faced with a power vacuum and a fractured enemy. Chaos breeds opportunity, but also danger. The Lannister armies, though demoralized, are far from defeated. They're like a wounded lion, unpredictable, and still capable of inflicting grievous harm. Robb needs to consolidate his gains, secure his borders, and exploit the Lannister disarray before they can regroup and strike back. He begins by reinforcing key strategic locations. River Run, strategically vital due to its location and ancestral significance for House Tully, and the Twins, commanded by Walder Frey. While Robb might not trust the Lord of the Crossing, he recognizes the Twins' vital importance as the only way for an army to cross the Trident River, and he grudgingly acknowledges that the Freys are an essential buffer against any potential Lannister incursions from the south. Messengers are dispatched to rally support from wavering river lords, reminding them of their oaths and of the Lannister treachery. Robb, ever the pragmatic leader, understands that loyalty must be earned, but at the same time he also recognizes that fear is sometimes an equally powerful motivator. But the most pressing issue is the fate of his father. News of Ned Stark's release, secured as part of the terms for Tywin Lannister's imprisonment, sends a wave of relief and renewed determination through the north. But that release comes with conditions. Hostages are exchanged, of course, loyal. Lannister bannermen traded for northern lords held captive in King's Landing. It's a bitter pill to swallow, the knowledge that some of his own men remain in enemy hands. Yet, Robb recognizes that this is a necessary sacrifice to secure his father's freedom. And so, after what feels like an eternity, Ned Stark returns to Winterfell. The reunion is, of course, deeply emotional. Robb, Catelyn, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Rickon, all are reunited, if only for a short while. The scars of war are evident on all of them. Robb, aged beyond his years by the burdens of leadership. Catelyn, hardened by loss and betrayal. Sansa, bearing the silent weight of her experiences. In King's Landing, Arya, fiercely independent and tempered by adversity. And Bran and Rickon, still young, are nonetheless marked by the unfolding chaos of the world. Ned returns not as the Warden of the North, but as a man profoundly changed. Imprisonment, betrayal, and the near loss of his life have stripped away any remaining illusions about the nature of power in Westeros. He is no longer the idealist who blindly trusted in honor and justice. He is now a pragmatist, a realist, acutely aware of the ruthlessness and deceit that underpin the Game of Thrones. He immediately steps back from any formal position of command. The North needs Robb, and Ned knows better than to undermine his son's authority. Instead, he becomes a trusted advisor, a voice of reason and experience amidst the chaos of war. He recognizes Robb's strengths, his charisma, his tactical brilliance, his unwavering commitment to his people. But he also sees his weaknesses, his youth, his impulsiveness, his tendency to trust too easily. Ned's primary focus shifts to securing the North's long-term independence. He recognizes that simply winning battles is not enough. The North needs to forge alliances, establish clear borders, and secure guarantees of its sovereignty. He begins by strengthening ties with the Riverlands. The marriage alliance between Robb and Talisa Maegir, while initially controversial due to the sliding of the phrase, ultimately proves to be a strategic asset. Talisa's intelligence and her understanding of the world beyond Westeros give Robb a fresh perspective on the political landscape. She is also a constant reminder of the values he's fighting for: justice, compassion, and the protection of the innocent. Ned also reaches out to other potential allies. Dorne, with its historical animosity towards the Iron Throne, presents a promising opportunity. Ned initiates secret negotiations, offering assurances of mutual respect and cooperation. He argues that a strong, independent North and a strong, independent Dorne can serve as a check on the power of the Iron Throne, preventing future abuses and ensuring the stability of the realm. The Iron Islands are a more complicated proposition. Balon Greyjoy's ambition and his unwavering belief in the Iron Price make him a difficult partner. However, Ned recognizes that the Iron Fleet is a formidable force, one that could potentially be used to disrupt Lannister supply lines and weaken their hold on the South. He cautiously extends an offer of alliance, promising Balon control over the western coastline of the North in exchange for his support. It's a risky gamble, one that could potentially alienate the northern lords and invite further Ironborn aggression. But Ned is willing to take that risk if it means securing the North's independence. Internally, Ned focuses on strengthening the North's economy and its defenses. He encouraged trade with the free cities, seeking to diversify the North's sources of income and reduce its reliance on the South. He orders the construction of new castles and fortifications along the northern border, preparing for any potential threats from beyond the wall. He also invests in the training and equipping of the Northern Army, ensuring that it is prepared to defend the North against any future aggressors. But Ned's most important task is to unite the Northern Lords. The war has strained relationships and exposed old rivalries. Some lords resent Robb's youth and his reliance on foreign advisors. Others are wary of Ned's pragmatism and his willingness to compromise with former enemies. Ned understands that a divided North is a vulnerable North. He travels from castle to castle, meeting with lords and listening to their concerns. He reminds them of their shared history, their common values, and their unwavering loyalty to the Stark family. He appeals to their sense of honor, their sense of duty, and their sense of self-preservation. Slowly, gradually, the North begins to heal. Old wounds begin to close, and new alliances are forged. The Northern Lords, united under Robb Stark's banner and guided by Ned Stark's wisdom, begin to prepare for the challenges that lie ahead. Meanwhile, Tywin Lannister sits chained in a dungeon beneath Winterfell. The proud lord of Casterly Rock, stripped of his power and his dignity, is forced to confront the consequences of his actions. He rages, he pleads, he threatens, but his words fall on deaf ears. The Northerners, hardened by years of war and injustice, are unmoved by his arrogance and his self-pity. Ned visits him occasionally, not out of pity or compassion, but out of a sense of duty. He wants to understand the man who brought so much suffering to his family and to his people. He engages Tywin in long philosophical debates, probing his beliefs, challenging his assumptions, and forcing him to confront the moral implications of his actions. These conversations are often heated and confrontational. Tywin defends his actions, arguing that he was simply doing what was necessary to protect his family and to maintain order in the realm. He accuses Ned of being naive, of failing to understand the harsh realities of power. Ned counters by arguing that there is a difference between strength and tyranny, between justice and vengeance. He insists that even in times of war, there are moral boundaries that should not be crossed. Ultimately, these conversations prove to be futile. Tywin remains unrepentant, convinced that he was right all along. But Ned, despite his disappointment, gains a deeper understanding of the Lannister mindset. He realizes that Tywin's ruthlessness is not simply a matter of personal ambition, but a deeply ingrained belief in the superiority of his family and the necessity of maintaining their power at any cost. This understanding informs Ned's future decisions. He recognizes that the Lannister threat will not simply disappear with Tywin's imprisonment. The Lannister family, driven by their insatiable lust for power, will continue to scheme and plot, seeking to regain their lost dominance. The North must remain vigilant, prepared to defend itself against any future aggression. As winter descends upon Westeros, the North stands defiant, a beacon of hope amidst the gathering darkness. Robb Stark, the young king in the North, leads his people with courage and determination, guided by the wisdom of his father, Ned Stark. Together, they forge a new destiny for the North, a destiny of independence, prosperity, and enduring strength. But even as they celebrate their victories, they know that the war is far from over. The Lannisters remain a threat, and new dangers are emerging on the horizon. The shadow of dragons looms large, and the fate of the Seven Kingdoms hangs in the balance. The Game of Thrones continues, and the North must be prepared to play its part. The Lion may be dead, but the game for the Iron Throne is far from over. With Tywin Lannister's defeat and capture, in some tellings his outright demise on the battlefield, the political landscape of Westeros has been irrevocably altered. The Lannister armies, once a terrifying force, are in disarray. King's Landing is vulnerable, and the Iron Throne itself hangs in the balance. But who will seize it? And what kind of realm will emerge from the ashes of war? The answer, as always, is complicated. The death of Tywin Lannister, even his capture, creates a power vacuum that shakes the foundations of the Seven Kingdoms. His iron grip, his ruthless pragmatism, and his vast wealth had held the realm together, albeit through fear and coercion. With him gone, the old grievances, the simmering resentments, and the naked ambitions of the great houses rise to the surface. First, let's consider the immediate aftermath. The Riverlands, ravaged by war and Lannister depredations, breathes a collective sigh of relief. Robb Stark, now king in the north, finds himself in an unexpectedly strong position. He controls a significant portion of the Riverlands and has the support of key figures like Lord Edmure Tully. But Robb isn't interested in conquering the Iron Throne. His goal remains the independence of the North, and he's proven that he will make alliances with pretty much anyone who can help him achieve it. Then there's Stannis Baratheon, the rightful heir according to the laws of succession, a fact. He'll remind everyone of it every given opportunity. He has a strong claim, unwavering determination, and a loyal, if somewhat small, following. However, Stannis lacks the resources and popular support necessary to seize the Iron Throne by force. He needs allies, and he needs them fast. And of course, we can't forget the Tyrells. With the Lannisters weakened, the Tyrells see an opportunity to advance their own ambitions. Margaery Tyrell, ever the astute political player, will undoubtedly be maneuvering to secure a marriage alliance that puts her family on the Iron Throne. But with whom? That is the question. With so much uncertainty, a solution is presented as the only logical and reasonable option: a great council, a gathering of lords, ladies, knights, and influential figures from across the Seven Kingdoms, convened to decide the fate of the realm. It's a concept that has historical precedent, used in times of crisis and succession disputes. The location is carefully chosen, River Run, a central location, heavily guarded and situated in the heart of the Riverlands. The very location makes it clear to those who attend just who is in the most powerful position. The mood as the Great Council convenes is tense, to say the least. Suspicion, mistrust, and barely concealed animosity hang in the air. Every lord eyes every other lord, gauging their strength, assessing their intentions, and calculating their chances of success. The banners of the great houses, the Stark direwolf, the Tully trout, the Arryn falcon, the Baratheon stag, the Tyrell rose, create a kaleidoscope of colors, a visual representation of the fractured state of the realm. Robb Stark arrives. With a large contingent of northern lords and his mother, Catelyn Stark, their presence commands respect. a visual testament to the North's military strength and its crucial role in defeating Tywin Lannister. Their faces are grim, hardened by war and loss, but their eyes burn with determination. Independence is their goal, and they will not be swayed. Stannis Baratheon arrives, his demeanor as stern and unyielding as ever. He is accompanied by his loyal advisor, Davos Seaworth, and the Red Priestess Melisandre. The presence of the latter generates unease among many of the lords, who view her foreign religion with suspicion and fear. The Tyrells arrive in force, led by Mace Tyrell and his shrewd mother, Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns. They bring with them a retinue of knights, ladies, and courtiers, a display of wealth and influence designed to impress and intimidate. Margaery Tyrell is, as always, at the center of it all, radiating charm and grace, but with a steely glint. In her eyes, the absence of any major Lannister representation is a glaring omission. With Tywin Lannister either dead or imprisoned, and Jaime Lannister still a captive of the North, or dead, depending on the specific telling, the once mighty House Lannister is reduced to a shadow of its former self. Cersei Lannister, the Queen, Regent, is confined to King's Landing, her power diminished, her reputation tarnished. The debates within the Great Council are long, arduous, and often acrimonious. Stannis Baratheon, ever the stickler for the law, argues passionately for his claim to the Iron Throne. He reminds the assembled lords of his lineage, his unwavering commitment to duty, and his unshakable belief in his own righteousness. By right of blood, by the laws of succession, the Iron Throne is mine, he booms, his voice echoing through the chamber. I am the rightful king, and I will not yield. Robb Stark, however, counters with a powerful argument for northern independence. He speaks of the injustices suffered by his family, the betrayal of the Lannisters, and the North's long-standing tradition of self-governance. The North has bled. Enough for the Iron Throne, he declares, his voice resonating with the same northern steel as his father's once did. We will no longer be vassals, subservient to the whims of kings in the South. We are the North, and we will rule ourselves. The Tyrells, meanwhile, play a more subtle game. They do not openly declare their own ambitions, but instead seek to influence the other players. Olenna Tyrell, with her sharp wit and political acumen, whispers in the ears of influential lords, offering alliances, brokering deals, and subtly undermining her rivals. My dear lords, she might purr, her voice dripping with honeyed malice. Surely we can all agree that stability is paramount. A strong hand is needed to guide the realm through these turbulent times, a hand that is not stained with blood or blinded by ambition. Amidst all this politicking, a consensus begins to emerge. The lords of Westeros are weary of war, tired of bloodshed, and desperate for stability. They recognize that a compromise is necessary, a solution that addresses the concerns of all parties involved. The North's demand for independence is a major sticking point, but after much debate, a compromise is reached. The North is granted a form of semi-autonomy, with Robb Stark recognized as the Warden of the North, answerable to the Iron Throne only in matters of national defense. This is a significant victory for the North, granting them control over their own lands. Laws and customs dot with the North's demands addressed. The question of who will sit the Iron Throne remains. Stannis Baratheon's claim is strong, but his lack of popular support is a major obstacle. The Tyrells, with their wealth and influence, could potentially swing the vote in his favor, but only if they receive something in return. After more grueling negotiations, another compromise is reached. Stannis Baratheon is recognized as the King of the Seven Kingdoms, but his power is significantly curtailed. A council of regents is established, comprised of representatives from the major houses, to advise and constrain the king's actions. This council serves as a check on Stannis' authority, preventing him from becoming an absolute ruler. The Tyrells, in exchange for their support, secure key positions within the new government. Mace Tyrell is appointed Hand of the King, giving him considerable influence over the day-to-day affairs of the realm. Margaery Tyrell, ever the opportunist, becomes betrothed to Stannis Baratheon's young son, further cementing her family's power and influence. With these compromises in place, the Great Council reaches a decision. Stannis Baratheon is declared the King of the Seven Kingdoms, but his power is limited, and the major houses retain a significant degree of autonomy. The North is granted semi-independence, and the Tyrells secure key positions within the new government. A fragile peace descends upon Westeros. The war is over, but the wounds remain deep. The major houses, though nominally united under Stannis' rule, remain wary of one another, their ambitions barely concealed. And as they try to rebuild from the devastation of war, a new threat looms. On the horizon, across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen, the mother of dragons, is gathering her strength. She has dragons, an army of unsullied, and a burning desire to reclaim her birthright. News of Daenerys' growing power reaches Westeros, sending shivers down the spines of lords and commoners alike. The Targaryen dynasty may have been overthrown, but the memory of their dragons still haunts the land. The lords of Westeros, united but wary, must now prepare for a new war, a war against a foe unlike any they have ever faced. Stannis, ever vigilant, orders the defenses of King's Landing strengthened. He sends envoys to Essos, seeking alliances with potential allies. He consults with Melisandre, seeking guidance from her visions. The night is dark and full of terrors, she warns, her eyes glowing with an eerie light. The Dragon Queen is coming, and she will bring fire and blood. Robb Stark, ever pragmatic, begins to fortify the North's defenses. He orders the construction of new castles, the training of new soldiers, and the stockpiling of supplies. He knows that if Daenerys Targaryen lands in Westeros, the North will be the first to face her wrath. The Tyrells, ever resourceful, begin to amass their wealth and influence. They use their control over the grain supply to curry favor with the small folk, and their political connections to forge alliances with other houses. They know that if Daenerys Targaryen wins, the old order will be swept away, and they must be prepared to adapt to the new reality. As the realm prepares for war, uneasy alliances are forged. Stannis Baratheon, Robb Stark, and Mace Tyrell, once rivals, now find themselves united against a common enemy. They may not trust one another, but they recognize that their survival depends on their cooperation. The fragile peace forged in the shadow of winter is about to be tested. The promise of dragons hangs in the air, a harbinger of a new era of fire and blood. Westeros stands on the precipice of another great conflict, a conflict that will determine the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. Will they unite and stand against the Targaryens, or will Westeros fall to the Dragon Queen?